Good afternoon. This is Tuesday, January 14th, and this is the informational meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council. And I will call this meeting to order. And we're going to start out with our staff reports. And first on the docket is Lori Hogstead, City Clerk, please.
All right. City Council, I'm here to give an update on the April 8th, 2014 election. And I'm going to try to cover just 3 basic items. Otherwise, I could go on for quite some time about this. So we are going to talk about an ordinance that will be proposed coming before this group, a meeting that we had with the Secretary of State, Jason Gant, and also our webpage, the election webpage. I just wanted to give you the heads up that on January 21st, we will have an ordinance that will come before the council, and this ordinance is required per our city charter. Our charter requires us to have an ordinance come before the group to set the election date. And within this ordinance, it really covers 4 different objectives. One will be to set the election date for April 8, 2014. Secondly, will be to agree to jointly hold our election with the Sioux Falls School District. And they did vote last night at the school board meeting, and they approved joining with us. So now we just need to take our formal action. The third one is to adopt or designate the various campaign finance forms that are to be utilized for the election. And that's actually something that I am required to do per ordinance. That I will designate the statements that will be attached to the ordinance next week as the official statements for the election. And then last but not least, we need to designate the entire city as one precinct, as we are going to be utilizing vote centers and e-poll books. And that is required per state law. Sounds like a lot of information, but I worked on this with City Attorney Fifley, and we have it down to a concise 1-page ordinance. Just the basic information there. And then it also does authorize me to publish notices that need to be published in order to effect this election. And by the way, our very first ordinance is on Thursday for the notice of vacancy. So things are moving along. Secondly, Jason Gant met with our operations committee, and we had a number of questions for him about the vote centers and the e-poll books and those types of things, and he was willing to come and meet with us and sit down and just talk these things through. It was a great meeting. The types of we covered any and every topic possible, and of course we started with talking about the vote centers and staffing of the vote centers. We talked about the hard e-poll books, and we will be leasing those from the Secretary of State for a very, very nominal fee. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to use the poll books that they do have. They will bring them to us. I wasn't sure if we would have to go pick them up or how that would work. They will do all the programming. They will take care of the maintenance. And we have a lot of details to work out yet, but at least we know that we have those available for Election Day. We also talked about our ballot allocation, our ballot design. We'll have a unique challenge with our design this year because of so many topics being on the ballot. Not only for the races, but our 2 initiatives, our 2 referendums, our charter revision amendments. But we did learn from Secretary of State Gant that they have not yet in the state of South Dakota had to go to a 2-page ballot. So I think we'll be fine if the state issues can stay on 1 ballot. It might be very long, but we can keep it on 1 ballot. And then Secretary of State Gant also talked about 2 applications or programs that he will be rolling out that he's very excited about, he wants to use for our election. And I don't want to steal his thunder, so I'm probably not going to talk about them at this time. But we are going to have a joint press conference, press release with Secretary of State Gant here in Sioux Falls to talk about those 2 items that we are going to be able to experience, and the citizens will be able to experience for our April election. So overall, it was a very good meeting, very productive. Learned a lot, and shared a lot of information, and we will be in constant contact with him throughout this process. I guess I could see, are there any questions at this point I should have asked on the ordinance or on the meeting with Secretary of State Gant?
Councilor Anderson, please.
Lori, you talked about vote centers. Can you go further into that? Is that a consolidation of voting centers in Sioux Falls? And so because, you know, we've had issues with that over the past years where people aren't able to find their normal place to vote.
That's a great question, and that's something that we are really going to try to get the information out to the public as much as possible. We are going to have 13 set vote centers. The city has agreed to this, the school board has agreed to this, and the county commission has agreed to this. Now, granted, the county commission will need to enlarge their voting area. They have more, you know, the county area that they need to cover, but we've all agreed to use these 13 vote centers, and they're strategically placed throughout the city so that they're convenient for all the citizens. And in utilizing the vote centers, the citizens can go to any of the vote centers that they wish to vote at, which is why we need the e-poll books. You know, without the e-poll books, we could not do that, because if you recall previously, you would go in, give your ID or your name, and they would go through a paper book, find your name, you know, stamp by your name. And obviously we couldn't do that with 13 different locations in order to make sure that everybody voted once and just to maintain the records of all those names. And so that is why the e-poll books are really instrumental in this, and without that we could not do the vote centers. But we, you know, all three agencies have reviewed these locations, and in fact this summer we took a tour with the ADA consultants from New York that are renowned experts in their field, and they reviewed all of the locations as well, and there was only one location that they questioned. There was an issue with the slope of a ramp going into the entrance of the building, and it was really an easy fix because we just went about a mile down the road, and there was a brand new church that had been built that of course met all the requirements, and they were more than willing to let us utilize their location for a vote center. So we really are going to prepare an insert for the water bill, get the information out there, you know, have press releases, just constantly talk about these vote centers and the 13 locations, get the maps out there so that everyone's aware of where they can go. And the Secretary of State did talk about at our meeting that we had that the citizens will be able to go to the Secretary of State website, and when that's up, we'll have a link to that. And they will be able to put in their location, and it will show the different vote centers and which one would be closest to either where they live, where they work. Maybe they're picking up a family member to vote, and they can both go to the same location. So I think it will. This will be the third election that we're utilizing the vote centers. It was in 2012, and also the school district used the vote centers in their standalone school district election in 2013. We are going to use them for ours, and I know the county commissioners and Bob Litz, the county auditor, are going to be, you know, carefully watching how everything goes with us, because, you know, they're going to be utilizing those same centers and the e-poll books at their June primary as well as their November general election.
Councilor Anderson?
Might you have the list of 13?
Oh, not off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I should have brought that in with me. There's so many things I brought in today, but I did not bring that list. So I will make sure we get that. That's another thing that I'll be getting out on our website shortly.
Okay, thank you.
You know, I might add that this is really quite exciting, and Lori has done an excellent job on this. I know Councilor Aguilar and Councilor Erpenbach were concerned about voting, and I think what's going to happen here, it's going to make it actually easier for our citizens to vote. And this is really quite exciting, and the Secretary of State's office has been working with us very, very well to make sure that we're able to accomplish this. So it is very exciting. Good job, Lori. Are there any questions for Lori? Okay.
All right.
Comment though, back to your statement. As much as we can be excited about this, the one thing that I hope that we really work on is that promotion, getting it out to the public, letting them know where these 13 centers are. That has to be the priority, I feel, after watching a couple other elections and hearing some of the issues of people not being able to find, you know, their place to vote.
Yeah, I think we've practiced enough. It's time to get serious about this. Kenny, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, we'll definitely work on that and make sure that the word gets out there, and as much as we can, and we're going to use social media to promote that as well. And it is the third election using vote centers. It's just going to take a little time to acclimate the citizens to this new concept, but I think that, those that have tried it just really love it. I mean, that's what we hear. And I understand they're, used to going to a certain place for all these years, and not everyone likes change, but this is a change for the good and for the better. And so we'll definitely work on promoting that. If I could real briefly just touch on the website, I've been updating the election website daily, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, working to get it to look really professional, look nice, working with the webmaster's office. There's a few different ways the citizens can access our website. You can see that we have on our toolbar here an election selection, so we can choose election and it will pull up the 2014 election information. Or we also have under trending topics, we have 2014 election. And so if we choose that, it will pull up our election page. Now, one thing that we're working on that should be a little bit different in the morning is the resources section on this side. I'm going to clean that up a little bit, and I am going to have sections for candidates. You'll notice that we have really 3 categories of reporting and that type of thing this time. We'll have candidates or candidate committees. We will have ballot question committees, which is not something we normally would have, and political action committees. So I'm going to take some of these resources and put them into categories. So if you're a candidate or a candidate committee, you will choose that category and all of your information will be in that area. Now some of it's duplicated. It's interesting, the forms, there's a separate form for ballot question statement for a ballot question committee versus if you're a political action committee. But I will have these all categorized out under resources so that you can go to the specific section that you're looking for. And the candidate packets are available. I'm meeting with a number of candidates tomorrow to go through the packet with them. But everything that's in the packet will be also placed under the resources, so they'll be able to pull up all the same information. We are going to put the 2014 election calendar will also be moved over to resources once we clean that up a little bit. And this election calendar, gives all the pertinent dates that a candidate would need to know. It's particularly financial statements. One really important date is Friday, January 31st is the first day to circulate and file nominating petitions. And February 28th will be the deadline to file those petitions. And this calendar just kind of follows through with the candidates. Of course, we have a much more comprehensive calendar on our end, but this just gives the candidates just at a glance the different deadlines and so on that they would need to follow. We also have our Chapter 38, which is our election ordinances, linked directly to the American Legal website for all of our election ordinances. And then we have in this section those candidates that have filed a statement of organization and listed them by the position that they have filed that statement with. The only one that is not on here at this point is Manny Still, and he did have his announcement, but he has not yet filed his statement of organization, and he has 15 days to do that. So he will, when he turns his in, then we'll be up to date with all of those. And then also down below, this is the section where we will have the various financial statements that come in from the candidates. So you can click on links to those, and then also we'll track those political action committees and ballot question committees. You will be able to see those as resources as well. I've also utilized some information from the Secretary of State's office. For instance, the voter registration form will take you directly to the Secretary of State's link. There's a request for absentee ballot, which will take you there. And then there's also a new program regarding South Dakota active military and overseas citizens, and it will link you directly to their page. And as they add more to their site, which they are continually doing, I will be watching that and adding any links we may need, and then updating our page. Like I said, daily, or sometime right now it's several times a day that I'm making changes to this page. So trying to get as much information out there as possible and make it, easily readable that the candidate or citizens can go right to what they want to view and see it just at a glance. So that will change. If you look at it tonight, it'll probably look different tomorrow. So continually updating.
Are there any other questions for Lori? Thank you, Lori.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Jim David, our Legislative Operations Manager. Please, Jim.
Good afternoon, Jim David, City Council staff. The start of the legislative session was today, and one of your priorities is close to being put into bill format. This bill, which is being led by the South Dakota Municipal League, would allow municipalities to restrict alcohol carrier licenses by ordinance. If you do recall, last year, the Public Services Committee has reviewed the vehicle for hire ordinance, and part of their findings was actually that taxi cabs were serving alcohol in their vehicles, and so this was brought forward to the Municipal League. They agreed to take it forward, and the Department of Revenue has commented that they agree with the concept of the bill as it currently stands, but the Governor's office still needs to review the verbiage. I also want to point out that during the session there are multiple ways for you to be involved. There's 4 legislative coffees this year. The first 3 are on Saturdays, February 1st, 8th, and 22nd at the downtown Hilton Garden Inn, or Hilton Garden Hotel. But the 4th coffee is on a Friday morning. It's at 10 a.m., and that's going to be at the Holiday Inn City Center. There's also Municipal Day at the Legislature, February 4th and 5th, and Sioux Falls Day is on February 19th, and the Governor is the keynote address. And finally, there are multiple opportunities to stay updated on what's going on in Pierre. There's the Chamber Legislative Lookout, the Municipal League's email that goes out to many of you, and also Legislative Research Council has a bill tracker you can set up you can set up on their website, and you can monitor those particular bills. If you need to be on those lists or need to be set up on a bill tracker on their website, just let me know. But I'd be happy to entertain any of your questions.
Are there any questions for Jim? Yes, Councilor Jamison, please.
Not so much a question, but as long as we're on the same topic, on January 22nd, I'll be going to Pierre to testify at the Transportation Committee. So if you've got something that you'd like me to carry to Pierre for you on that issue, try to get with me or send me an email as soon as you can. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Anything else? Great, Jim, thank you very much. Thank you. This is an opportunity, a time for open discussion amongst the councilors, but before we do this, I would just like to bring to your attention that on April 8th, which is Election Day, we normally have a City Council meeting scheduled and committee meetings. At this point in time, I am canceling the informational meeting, the 4 o'clock informational meeting on April 8th, and also the Public Services Committee meeting. Councilor Anderson agrees with that. We will cancel those 2 meetings, and then the people's business, the business of the City Council, will be postponed and taken up on April 15th. And there will be a resolution to that effect coming forward on the 21st for the election. I'm sure we'll all be sitting by our televisions waiting for those election results. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. That being said, is there any other open discussion or anything else that the councilors have to bring forward? Good. We're going to get into committee reports. Thank you. I appreciate that. The first committee, the council, Lori Hogstead and Tamara here. Lori, did you want to touch off on this, or Tamara, you just going to pick it up? Yep. Got some exciting information for us here. Thank you, girls.
Thank you. Good afternoon, City Council. Tamara Jorgensen, Assistant City Clerk. I've been asked to provide an update to all of you on a project that our office has been working on recently with the GIS department. This is a project that we've been working on for a couple of weeks that we're going to enable the citizens of Sioux Falls to be able to find who their council member is quickly and efficiently, and also gives them access to information on the at-large city council members. First, I'd like to say that my counterpart is GIS specialist Maggie Elliott. Maggie developed this site for us and was instrumental in making progressive, positive suggestions for improvement. In addition, Maggie has created the legend that you're going to be reviewing soon. This did not come with the software, so Maggie set it up and made it exclusive for us, and it's very informational for you. She and web designer Elizabeth Schulte worked together to set up the coordinating links that you will also be reviewing. In the past, we have had citizens call us and ask us who their council member is, and the past procedure was to look at a map on the wall, which took a little bit of time, and we had to ask the citizen extra questions to determine where they live so we could give them their city council member's name and information. This took a little bit of time. It wasn't always accurate, so this system will replace that method, and we hope that it works great for all the citizens. The first key is knowing where to find this. It will be located at www.siouxfalls.org, which will be under the City Council's page. We're hoping to put it under key resources. It's not there now, obviously. It's going to require your discussion and your input and your permission, and once we have received that, it can be on there this week if you want. So once the citizen has gone to this page and clicked on the link, they are going to see this screen, and that is the legend that Maggie developed for you. It's color coordinated. It shows the 5 districts. It has your names and your district title. Also references the at-large members and gives a very brief description paragraph with directions about not using punctuation in the search box. So the citizen can go up to the search box, and for today's demonstration, we're going to use the address for the Carnegie Town Hall, which is 235 West 10th Street. And they will select that from the drop-down box for Sioux Falls. Now notice how quickly that moved. It takes you right to the central district. You get an information box that clarifies the address for you one last time. You click outside that box, and this will tell you you're in the central district. You click for more information, and that's always a yes. And you're going to see your central district representative is Michelle Erpenbach, along with the at-large members in alphabetical order. This gives the citizen quick access to your biographical information if they want it, your phone numbers, an ability to contact you immediately, and in the upper right-hand corner is also a box that gives our city council information if they want to get a hold of the city council's office. Maggie and Elizabeth have both done a fantastic job working on this, so again, I want to recognize them for their assistance with this project. Do any of you have any questions or suggestions, or is there anything else that I can explain to you?
Are there any other questions for Tamara? Counselor Jameson, did you have something, or are you just wiggling your finger?
Oh, I thought I'd just break the ice. Is there any way I could change my color to?
Sure.
I don't know who has pink, but as long as I'm not pink, I guess that's Kenny.
Oh,
Kenny is that beautiful fuchsia tone.
fuchsia, there you go.
Fuchsia, that's it. I was thinking.
You know, I actually like the presentation on paper because it has a very slimming effect for me.
And if you would like to discuss it, if you'd like this to be available to the public this week, we can make those arrangements.
You know, this is very good, Tamara. Thank you very much for your hard work on this project. Are there any other comments? I really think this is going to make it a lot easier for people to see us, to get information on the counselors. Very good job.
Jim,
Yes, Councilor James.
just to follow up, I was going to mention as well, I have gotten calls over the years about whose district are they in or who am I in when they ask, and I'm not exactly sure because there are a lot of jagged lines between us. And so I think this is a good tool. I think it should alleviate some questions from the public, and I can send them here and know definitively where they are. So I think it's good.
And then also I should add that as annexations occur, this map is updated when that happens, and when election changes occur, this is updated at the same time. It's very quick, very easy.
Councilor Karski.
I talked to Lori Hogstad about this. I can't remember the answer. Are we going to be able to, if I click on coming up to the election time and your election deal, will I be able to get a sample ballot closer to election by clicking on that? So not only do I know, based on where I live, what my ballot would look like? Are we going to be able to link that?
Yes, Secretary of State Gant will have that actually on the Secretary of State website. We will be able to, a citizen or any of us will be able to put in our address through their voter registration portal, and it will actually pull up a sample ballot on what the ballot would look like. And there's kind of another little part to that, but I don't want to share his exciting news yet. But yeah, we will be able to do that. I think that'll be. It's almost like ballot on demand, but it's absentee. We're not quite at that ballot on demand phase yet of the election process, but I assume we'll see that in the future. But yes, we will definitely be able to do that. And then he will also have the ability for the citizens, like I mentioned, to put in their address and see where the closest vote centers would be.
Councilor Aguilar.
So, Mr. Chair, since we don't vote at informational meetings, can we, by consensus, agree to have them put this forward as soon as possible?
And I have no problem with that. Councilors? You're going to bring the motion forward then later, Sue?
No. We don't need
We
a
don't need it.
motion.
I mean, later at the.
Do we need to?
Right. No, I meant at the. We don't even need to vote, just consensus. Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
And thank you, Lori, for helping me.
The second item that we have in presentations this afternoon is on the adaptive traffic signals on 26th Street. Mark, welcome. Director Cotter.
Thank you. Keith, will you please advance? Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. Today we have a short presentation for you to just bring more light to this new topic and new technology that we'll be bringing to Sioux Falls called adaptive traffic technologies. One of the key outcomes of the last citizen survey was traffic congestion was starting to increase, and they wanted to make sure that the city was starting to put more resources toward moving traffic and moving traffic smarter. And so with your support last year of advancing some of the surplus dollars, we're here today, and actually next week we'll actually be deploying the first corridor that will affect 10 intersections on East 26th Street. I would like to take the opportunity, since this is really, it's the first in Sioux Falls and it's also the first in the state of South Dakota, would like to introduce the project team, and if they could just stand so they could be recognized. Our first is our project manager, Erin Bovenkamp. She's led this project, coordinated all the various parties to make sure that we look at all the risks and address the issues. The project sponsor is the Assistant City Engineer, Jeff Delores. Keith Hofteaser is a gentleman that you get to know very well. He's our principal traffic engineer. And then our vendor that's been selected, and that went through a lengthy process, is Rhythm Engineering, and Nate Thomasai is here, and you'll hear from him tonight as well. The gentlemen that are not here are our traffic team. They actually did the install of all the cables, the cameras, and the processors. And so we just want to make sure we recognize them today. So, next slide. All right, just a little bit of background on how we got here. About 18 months ago, Federal Highway Administration put together a team to start looking at adaptive traffic technologies. And if you remember the Everyday Counts initiative, that was one of those areas that we looked at when we wanted to deliver the 41st Street Bridge in an accelerated fashion. That all falls under this Federal Highway umbrella of Everyday Counts, really trying to deliver projects smarter and faster, and in this case, move traffic much more efficient. And so they thought the best way to look at these technologies is to do an actual scan tour, get a group of individuals, go to the East and West Coast, look at a number of different cities that are using them, and especially the cities that were using different types of the technology, because there's about 10 different solutions out there that you can pick from. Heath was invited by the Department of Transportation to attend that, along with the traffic engineer from Rapid City. And so they got to look at several cities. They did 2 different trips. It was very beneficial for Heath to actually go out there and not only talk to the people that sell these solutions, but they also the people that manage them on a daily basis. And truly, do they work? Have they seen the results that they wanted? And what Heath came back and told us is that the vendor that the communities, and these communities ranged anywhere from 53,000 people in population up to over 500,000, to give a very good diverse, the ones that were most happy and ready to move forward with more corridors used Rhythm Engineering out of Kansas City. So that was our vendor. That's who we've selected, and you're going to hear more from them today. So again, just kudos to Federal Highway Administration and the Department of Transportation really kicking this off about 18 months ago. They invited us to be a part of it, and ultimately now, 18 months later, you get to deploy the first one in the city and first one in the state of South Dakota. Quick just breakdown on the Keep Sioux Falls Moving project timeline. And again, this is reflective after you authorize the funding for us to purchase, about a $317,000 solution for East 26th Street. That affects 10 intersections, essentially the first intersection east of Cliff Avenue, which is Van Epps, all the way out east to Rosa Park School. Those 10 intersections will have technology. Again, the installation was done by our local teams. The fiber was installed for the camera systems in September, October. In November, the installation of the system, essentially the cameras and the processors. December, last month, Rhythm's team came up and trained our team. Just really started to educate us on what we can expect to see, and And this will take a series of weeks to really dial in, but ultimately we are going to go live next week. And then just last week we got our last signal, and the signal at Rosa Parks was also an additional surplus project that you advanced forward. There's a lot of people that make that left-hand turn into Rosa Parks School, and that signal Heath and his team just got installed and turned on, so that becomes one of the 10 intersections on this corridor. So, all right, today you get an opportunity to hear from Rhythm Engineering and Heath Hofteaser. So first we'll bring forward Nate Thomasai. He's with Rhythm Engineering. He's really going to focus on what is adaptive traffic technologies, the benefits, and what drivers can expect. After Nate, Heath will come up and speak specifically to you on the 26th Street project. Nate?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me. As Mark just pointed out, there's a couple topics I'll talk about, and I guess at the end, if there's any questions, please feel free. So the first one that we wanted to talk about is what is the difference between adaptive and the other technologies out there you could use. So really, in a city like yours, if you are having traffic problems, there's a few different things you could do beforehand. One is hire a consultant or your own engineering team to retime it, using the tools they currently have to do it, and get maybe 5% improvement out of the system. That's a pretty actually aggressive for retiming it with traditional tools.
Excuse me, Nate. I'm sorry. Could I have you step forward just a little bit more and lift the mics up a little bit so we can hear you a little bit better? The public can too. Thank you very much.
The other option you guys can do with the city is lay more pavement, which, you know, I don't know exactly what it is for South Dakota, but I know for 1 mile in Arkansas, it's over $2 million to take and annex that land and also pave all the roads. So a very expensive way to add capacity to it. So the other option, thinking outside the box, is bring in technology that could do it. And adaptive technology, I'm not the only vendor that can do it, but the adaptive technology, what it does is take some of the old tools and makes them a little bit more effective. So in an old system, it really is a sprinkler system. It's as simple as that. You program what zones you want watered and how long you want them watered, and it kind of just goes around like this. And then it got a little smarter in the 70s, and there's detection that says, okay, if there's no one there, you can skip that zone, but hey, you're still going around like this. With adaptive traffic, it can change that. And actually, Rhythm's the only one that can manipulate it the way we do, but what we say is, I know every second how many people are in, or how many cars are in that queue for what phase, and I can calculate how long it takes for each one of those to pass through the intersection and get cleared out. Or when you're talking about progressing through the corridor, I can start counting how many cars there are, bunch them, we call them platoons of cars, and move them through that whole corridor all at once. That's what we do. With our image detectors, our cameras that are shown right here, and you guys will see on 26th Street, we measure how many cars and how long they're sitting out there. And using our algorithms, it fits into a greater network that can then push traffic through it. So in an old system, the other cameras you guys have sitting up in the city, I bet, or in other cities, it says there's 1 car there or there's 0 cars there, and that's all it can tell you. Our system can tell you 30, 40 cars out there, and we can even program it like on your off-ramp, if it's backing up a certain amount, we see 30 cars, we can say 30 cars equals 50 cars and make sure that gets flushed out. Another difference that we can do that you definitely will notice out there is we can change the way we service the phases or the different approaches for you. So if typically you come up to a stoplight and it's northbound and southbound are running right now and you're on the eastbound, you know you're coming next usually. That's not the way it works anymore. It actually figures out the most efficient way to service traffic and then puts that in place to it. So for instance, on 229, that off-ramp you guys have here in the city, I was just driving a little bit, I noticed a lot of times where there would be a car that pulls up right whenever it gets yellow and has to sit there. But there's not a lot of traffic on the main line. So maybe it goes back to the main line for 5-10 seconds to service that, and then it can jump back to the ramp to service that before the end of what traditionally we call a cycle, and now we call a period with our system out there. So the main difference is now we're adding more tools and more flexibility to efficiently move traffic throughout your city. So some of the benefits of our system, and when I started about 4 years ago, we didn't really talk about the safety features. We knew it was there, but we really didn't talk about it because there wasn't a lot of data out there from different municipalities. This is now our #1 mission statement, our #1 goal out there is to move traffic so we reduce crashes. As you can imagine, if I'm moving traffic in a nice platoon through it, there's not stop and go. You're not going to have those rear-end accidents. And out of all of our deployments, which we have over 1,000 intersections running, the statistics that are coming back are over 24% reduction in rear-end crashes. So to us, that's the biggest thing. You know, getting your loved ones to their destinations faster and safer is our mission statement. So that's the big thing for us, is the safety aspect of it. The next thing, and what you guys will see out there mostly, are things like stops. On average, 60% reduction in stops. We haven't got all the before and after data, and we'll continue to get some of that, but that's the type of numbers we're looking at here, possibly a little bit less because it is coordinated right now. We're also looking at travel time reductions of about 25%. We're looking at emissions at about 18% reduction because it is a smoother, more efficient ride through it, less time going through it, and fuel savings of about 16% as well. The last thing is, what will the drivers expect? I've gone through it a lot already, but shorter progression through the corridor, and they've outlined exactly where the intersections are. So those 10 intersections, you'll be able to get through them quicker. You'll also be able to save money in gas. Biggest thing, get home safer. And the one thing that I do want you guys, I know you will drive it, to know, and I'll repeat this, is it's not a traditional system that just goes round and round. So you will pull up to an intersection. You think you're next, but you have to watch that red light or the indicators in front of you to make sure that it is your turn to go. And by just the simple fact of doing that, that is part of the reduction in crashes alone, is you keep people aware of what's going on instead of looking down and texting and doing other things. They're more aware of, hey, things are different out here. We need to pay attention to that.
All right, Heath Hofteser, Principal Traffic Engineer for the City of Sioux Falls. I just wanted to take some time to talk to you guys a little bit about the 26th Street corridor, kind of a little bit about the challenges that are on it. I think everybody here is familiar with the challenges that we see. One of the things that we have is there's school traffic out there. We have an elementary school at the west end, an elementary school at the east end. Those cause what we'd say short, different types of traffic flows at 26th Street and Sycamore. There's a lot of left turns that occur when kids are going to school for about a 15-minute period in the morning. This system is much more capable of adapting to those left turns for the parents taking the kids to school than our traditional timing plans are out on the corridor. So that's somewhere that, or that's something that we've seen out there that we could improve. One of the biggest challenges we have on the 26th Street corridor is the railroad crossing. And the way the traditional timing plans work out there, it's after a train goes through and a train goes through, sometimes it can take 15 to 20 minutes for the signal to get back in sync and start moving traffic efficiently again once the traffic's really backed up during one of the peak periods. And our goal with this system is to use the in-sync system to more quickly get back into sync and have the optimizers from the processor be able to really take a closer look at where the traffic is backed up following a train coming through the system and really clear out traffic faster after a train comes through. Another thing is we have the I-229 intersections, it's the backups onto the interstate are a concern with the DOT and with us. That's one of the things that we always want to keep track of for safety. So those were some of the different things that we wanted to work with out in the corridor. Some of the things here, reasons why we picked this corridor as one of our first corridors. It's the first corridor that we did something like this. We wanted to make sure we had good communications to our equipment out in the field. And our 26th Street communications, our fiber, it's been very solid over the past few years that we've had it in place, and we feel very confident that we're going to be able to continuously communicate with everything out there. To where this system has backups in place, if we lost communications, where it could run on its own between the intersections, we want to be able to monitor what's going on to really be able to watch the system and see how it works and make it as best as we can for the public. And then I guess a little bit too, talking about the cameras, one of the big things that this particular system, the NSYNC from Rhythm Engineering, the camera system, we've got some other cameras in the city we've used throughout the years that we've replaced because of problems that we've had where they really don't hold up in fog or snow very good. This particular system, it has a it keeps its historic data for the last 30 days, and what it does is if it's at 8:15 in the morning on a Tuesday and fog's rolled in and the camera can't see traffic, it goes back and it looks at what happened the last 4 Tuesdays at 8:15 and it averages those out, and that's the traffic it's running. It's saying, okay, this is what's happened in the past, so it has historic backup that it runs, and that's one of the things that we really saw in the system as a benefit. And then let's see, the cameras, working with cameras in the past too, one of the things that I will work with them on this system, and this comes a little bit from out at the Sturgis Rally when I worked for the DOT in the past, where we were able to do a lot with motorcycles with the cameras too, and it's one of the things that I think we'll really be able to work with the system. Another note too, the system does work with other types of detection too, but it's able to, the algorithms work the best with the camera, and we wanted to, this particular corridor, we wanted to try to use the cameras to, really see what we can make this system do out there. So we're excited. Want to go to the next page? Okay, our goals for the system, we've got a couple different goals. The first and foremost is reduce travel times and stops on East 26th Street and reduce delay on the side streets. I think that those are things that everybody wants to see. We want the system to be able to adapt the signals to variable traffic, such as we were talking about peaks for corridors, peaks for the school periods when school starts or gets out, or with the system, a school could get out early and it could adjust the traffic pattern to it. For instance, if like Lincoln High School gets out early, it can make adjustments that aren't in our normal timing plan for when those high school kids get out at noon versus getting out at 3 or 4 in the afternoon. A couple of the other things we're looking at, the system, we want to do a really detailed before and after study on the system. So we've been going through, and it's Nick Ritter and Troy Miller, 2 of our traffic engineers, are in the audience too. They've been collecting a lot of travel times out on the corridor, driving through, where we've got a GPS unit that's keeping track of how long it takes to get through. It keeps track of their average speed, the number of stops, how much delay they experience. So we're doing that before and we're doing that after, so we can see exactly what type of change we make to the corridor. We've gone through our crash records. We've summarized the 2010 through 2013 crashes on the corridor so that as we go forward, we'll be able to analyze the future crashes and make comparisons for before and after. And then we're also going to be collecting real detailed traffic volumes from before and during the system once we get it operational to see what kind of impacts we have on traffic out on the corridor. And then also one of the other things we collected is queue lengths. We've collected for all the left turn traffic and all the side street traffic, how far the traffic queues back during the AM peaks and PM peaks. So we want to use that as a measurement for, for instance, on 26th Street and Southeastern Avenue during the AM peak, we have 22 vehicles that are northbound in each of the through lanes. 22 vehicles was how far it was back, and I know it's longer at some times and sometimes it's shorter, but we go out and we collect on a couple different days, and that's one particular data point we have, where we'll be comparing that type of data for before and after to really do an analysis of what this system does for us. And then, as far as trying to communicate to the public, we've set up a web page on the City of Sioux Falls website. That's www.siouxfalls.org/26. We had, starting last Friday, we put message boards out on the East 26th Street corridor directing people to the web page to find out more information about the system. And currently, we've changed those signs over to the I-229 26th Street and Southeastern corridor open house that's occurring tomorrow, which is for the DOT corridor study we're doing on 26th Street. And we're informing people that that's at John Harris Elementary School on January 15th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And then after that open house occurs, we'll turn those message boards back off for a couple days. And then we plan to, on probably Monday evening next week, on the evening of the 20th, put up a message letting people know to expect changing signal patterns throughout the corridor, because we'll be switching over on January 21st to the new adaptive system, and things will start to look a little different out there. So that's something that we just want to try to communicate it to the public and let them know. And then one of the other things that we're going to be doing is on January 23rd, we're going to have a panel discussion at the City Hall Commission Room where we're going to have Reggie Chandra, who's from Rhythm Engineering, Dan Martell, who's from the South Dakota Department of Transportation, Mark Cotter from the city, and then myself will be at this. And basically what we're going to do is just kind of let people know what the system is, and then have a real open question and answer system to talk about the system and what's going on. It's one of those things we just really want to communicate to everybody what we're doing on with the system, and I'm real excited about it. Want to pull up this? You want to show the camera?
Heath will give you just a sneak peek at what one of these cameras is looking at one of the intersections. Here it is. And so between Nate or Heath, do you want to just communicate what those various areas are doing?
Sure. Right now, since the system's not turning into adaptive, actually these cameras are acting like a loop or another camera that you guys would have up there. So it's not doing exactly what we would see next week. But you can see a few, the red and the green are the light indicators of what color the lights are up there. There's a number right above that, which is actually a TMC count, or when a car passes over a line in there, then it counts it, and every 15 minutes it reports it to a reporting station that Heath and his team can get to. Above that is a queue, and that is estimated at this point. Next week when we turn it on, that queue will be analyzed further with a different algorithm, and it comes out to be a little bit more straightforward and more accurate at this point. But right now, that is what you're seeing up there. You'll also see, starting next week, our scheduler. It's actually the brains of the operation, the optimizer. On the left-hand side in the middle of the screen, you'll get to see what the next phases are that are getting pulled up. And second by second, the algorithms in the background are calculating, is that the right decision? Should I put more time somewhere else? Should I go and serve somebody else? Do I have enough time for that? And you'll start seeing that morph into different things. And that will be there next week, starting next week.
Anything else? Well, the team is here. If you have any questions, we'd love to answer them.
I might start it off here, Mark, if you don't mind. I noticed, Heath, you mentioned that you're going to be really harvesting a lot of data as you go forward with this. What are the plans for future rollouts of these kinds of systems?
Yeah, I guess one of the next steps that we have is we're working with the original research panel we had with the DOT, where in Federal Highway, Mark was talking about a little bit, that that's where we went on the scan tours and went to the East and West Coast and checked out those systems. That through that, we're working with the DOT for a 41st Street adaptive system, and we're looking, primarily in the area of the Empire Mall, and then stretching probably to the east and west a little ways on 41st Street too. And we've it's one of those things we wanted to get this one in and go through it and, really make sure that everything works the way we want before we start getting too far down that line. But that's the next spot we want to go. And, we've identified a lot of other places where we have our communications in place between the signals and that would be decent corridors where it's a possibility, so.
Good, thank you. Councilor Karski, please.
Question, I'm not too sure who to address this to, but right now we've got it across a pretty good sized corridor. And is there a minimum area that this really needs to service to be effective? Can it be used for individual intersections? How is it best applied?
I know it's been used for individual intersections at times in small corridors. I think Nate can probably answer that best, though.
Yes, it really depends on the goals of the system. So we do have a few places. Actually, one of our most successful is right outside the King of Prussia Mall in Pennsylvania. It's 2 signals. It's actually the largest square foot mall in the country. And 2 intersections, cleared people out very well, and they're very happy with it. But then they started expanding it. Our rule of thumb is if you order less than 6, I want to come and make sure that your goals are in line with what we can do, because you guys are drivers every day. If you get through 4 lights without having to stop, you say, oh my gosh, this is revolutionary. Or are you like me that you travel over to Augusta and you travel 26 intersections, you don't have to stop, and you say, okay, something's special here. So 6 is kind of my minimum. I will do something less than that, but it really depends on your unique goals of each of the projects. So reducing delay, you could do this.
Greg, I'm sorry, I didn't see you nod. Did you have any questions?
Sure. I could ask a few. The fiber optic line that's on that 26th Street, well, first off, I think the people who travel that corridor are going to be very happy. And they're all going to wish they lived over there now, or that the system has come into their neighborhood. But the fiber optic line that's there, is that necessary for this system to work?
You can use wireless communications too. There's a couple different ways to bring it back. When I was in Virginia, looking at the systems that the Virginia DOT has in place in Charlottesville and Staunton, Virginia, they had wireless communications in place. It works. It's not as far as if you're back at, we'll say the central office, or in our case, our office over in the library for traffic engineering, if we're working on the corridor, it's not as responsive. Just seeing how what they see out on the corridor, the information they're getting back through the video for making adjustments versus what I saw from the other communities that have the more robust communications in place. It worked better with the better communications, but it can work with less. So,
as far as Sioux Falls goes, the amount of fiber optics that are buried throughout the city, I know there's an intent to get all those connected as roads get repaired or remodeled or rebuilt. But just in general, do you guys know what percentage of the city is laid with fiber optics?
I think it's about 68% of the signals that we've got hooked to our fiber optic system, which I think that's really the question there.
Yes.
It's 68% of them are hooked to that system right now. Yeah, that's we have our it's the communication networks upgrade project in the CIP, where every year we're going through and we're adding fiber in different locations to expand that network every year. So it's been a big push. Probably in the last 4.5 years, we went from 40% to that 68% mark. So I think we've been making a big push towards that. So,
Councilor Erpenbach, please.
Thank you. Either Heath or Mark, this sounds a little bit like science fiction. I mean, I'm sitting here saying to Councilor Rolfing, no way does this, I can't believe it. But then I'm thinking, I mean, if it really does work, and I assume that it does, I'm teasing. But I assume that if I'm the driver going from the Rosa Parks neighborhood and I'm headed for Minnesota Avenue, I'm going to zoom along doing pretty well, right in the speed limit, not stopping too much. And I'm going to get to Cliff Avenue and boom, I'm done, right? because on the other side of Cliff Avenue is where the block really is. I mean, I understand these folks that are in that area that we're talking about here, but the folks from Cliff Avenue to Minnesota Avenue on 26th, I'm sorry, they're hurting big time. And now I feel like we're going to dump even more cars in there. It almost feels like, I mean, if that platoon of, I love the military terms, the platoon of cars comes and it hits Cliff Avenue and it's still going west. Talk to me about those folks and why is that not the next segment? I mean, I realize 41st Street's a big deal, but.
It's a possibility for us to add on to this too, to add 26th and Cliff and to go to the west. Probably one of the biggest things about going west of 26th Street and Cliff Avenue is that is one of the areas we don't have communications between the intersections. But then from that same standpoint, we could have a couple of them on wireless too out there. So that's possibilities too. I mean,
That would be one I would really advocate for. The more I think about this, the more concerned I am about that segment of street.
This is one of those things that, you could end up putting lots of different systems in and whatnot. The closest locations to us that's using it right now, West Des Moines, Iowa, they've started to put the systems in. They put in, I can't remember exactly how big it was, they put in a corridor right by the Jordan Creek Mall, and they've put in, I think, 3 more systems since then in that area where, they're one of them we've really worked with closely on what they've done and how things have worked for them. It's one of those things we can always add more and bring more into it. So.
Great, thank you.
Rex?
Yep. I have a number of questions if I could, but first of all, I want to say this, from the safety standpoint and from potential savings on our street, this could be really, really big. And so I applaud you for going ahead and getting this looked at and for the council to have the vision to give you the money to do it, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
The thing we've got right here in our cameras right now is that going to be something that the public can pull up off the off our website?
It's not set up right now. This is on the city intranet.
Okay.
This computer is. That's why we're able to get to it and show you.
But would that be something that could be put on there? Somebody might want to take a look at this to see how it's going and see how it's working. So I'm assuming that might be something you'd want to take a look at, right?
Yeah, there's possibilities of doing things like that. We've talked about them in the past, and it's something that could be considered.
One other thing, I think we need to make it really clear to the people of Sioux Falls that we are not going to be issuing speeding or right turn or red light tickets through this system, correct?
Yep. We did get some feedback from the public asking those questions, and that's correct. We're not recording anybody's speed with these cameras. We're not doing any red light running or anything of that matter. The cameras aren't set up for that. They're not going to be utilized for that in any way.
Just wanted to make sure that it was on the record for that. May I,
One more.
One more? Only
One more.
Can I make it a double? No.
No.
Okay. You indicated that there's going to need to be some education, if you will, about the people going through there. Are we going to put up some billboards or something there that says, this is new, watch out? I don't know how you'd word it, but
that's we've got the message boards out on the 26th Street corridor right now. We've got a pair of them that we put up the message last week, pointing them to the web page. Right now, it's letting people know about the 26th Street corridor open house that's on the 15th at John Harris. But then following that, we'll be changing the message back to something alerting the public that come Tuesday, they're gonna be seeing changing traffic patterns on the corridor, because that's the big thing. We really want the public to be, to pay attention. We want them watching the signals.
Exactly, because otherwise you could have an increase.
And it's interesting. The other communities we talked to, it was Pinellas County down in Florida. Their one of the big things they had was they got calls in from the public about it was different. And they asked them, well, did you have to wait? Or they're like, no, I actually got through it faster than normal, but it cycled different. It was a different, they were calling in asking about it because they said it worked differently. So,
yeah.
Kenny?
On this, I guess, one for Heath and then one for Nate. Heath, on these videos, these are just video streamed. Are they recorded for any length of time?
At this point, they're just streamed.
They're just streamed?
Right now, they're not recorded in any way
Okay.
at this point.
And then for Nate, you have these installed throughout the country, I take it.
Yes.
Besides traffic control, is there any other applications that are being utilized by other cities at this time?
No. There's a lot of, we have a big R&D team that have a lot of grand ideas of how to use it, but we only specialize in bringing people to their destinations faster and safer. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Staggers, please.
Yes, for Mark.
Yes, Counselor.
Yeah, I think this is great, and I hope it works out really well. But while we're working on this very sophisticated approach towards traffic movement, can we just also do something less sophisticated? And that is just simply trying to get a lot of our stoplights timed. I know this has been brought up in the past, but you know, just simply being able to drive down Minnesota and basically getting through most of the lights. Right now we can't. So can we also work on that at the same time too?
Heath and his team actually do on a typical corridor like 26th Street or Minnesota. They'll actually go out and count all the movements on each of those respective intersections. And they've got high-tech cameras that do the counting. They don't field manually count anymore. But then they load that information into a software program, Synchro, and then it best fits a timing plan, but then it's locked down. It's kind of like the sprinkler analogy. They do that on corridors like that about every 2 to 3 years. We just added one of the positions that you authorized last year was an additional traffic engineer, and so we started that process early. We started it in December, and so Troy actually just started last week, a new traffic engineer, just to give us more resources to do more of those updating timing plans. Minnesota Avenue is really one of our next corridors to go to. It has congestion, it has fiber, and so we think with 26th Street, with the level of traffic, over 25,000 vehicles per day, and the level of congestion, and then with the partnership with the DOT to do the majority of 41st Street, there's about 60 accidents a year at 41st and I-29. They want to make the investment, and they've budgeted for it on 41st. We're going to see how this solution works with Rhythm, and if it does work, we potentially would be coming back to you in 14 to take a closer look to accelerate the solution on Minnesota Avenue.
But once again, it seems to me we could have a number of solutions, and this is a very sophisticated solution, but just simple timing on of red lights.
Yeah,
maybe Heath, you want to just add to that?
Yeah.
That's with our added staff position, we're going to be able to cycle through the intersections a lot quicker. And when we get back to retiming them, we were actually getting to the point where it was over 3 years after we time an intersection before we get back to it. And we want to, that's one of the things we really want to stress is getting back and, at less than 3 years, get back to an intersection and be redoing the timings again, so.
Okay. And I just assume that would include like 12th and 10th and so forth.
Karski, Councilor Karski once.
Well, just one more question. How does the system work in regards to emergency vehicles? Is there something that picks up on a flashing signal, that type of thing?
Yep, it's the emergency vehicles. We have the emergency vehicle preemption in our intersections, the way we're programmed right now. It's the highest priority. In the way that the way the system works, it's putting in calls to the controller, and it's not taking the highest priority. The emergency vehicle preemptions or train preemption, in the case of Southeastern Avenue, they'll come along and take the highest priority and take over control. But then when we talked about a train coming through the corridor, after that train passes through, instead of having to get back into sync to its timing pattern, this system will be able to get back to a flow on 26th Street and optimize moving the traffic off the side streets quicker than our traditional timing programs can, the way preemption works. So,
okay. Thank you.
Greg, one more, please.
Thank you. I think after everybody drives through this, they're going to want it in their backyard, and I think it's exciting. I was going to just, as a member of the UDC committee, the Urbanized Development Commission, part of the MPO, the state had told us that they're going to be spending $500,000
Yes.
on 41st Street. And that's a federal highway safety grant that they received, and they're transferring it through the city. They're also doing one in Rapid City on Omaha Avenue. They're going to be starting on 41st from Minnesota Avenue going west, and I don't think they've quite decided which system they'll put in, but I hope you are all communicating on what system so that they can interface without any problem. As well, just in the scheme of things, this system seems to be maybe a Cadillac. Is it a Cadillac? In all your studies, did you find that this being the best of the best, or is it kind of a medium? Where is it?
This was one that we found that it worked well for everywhere that went in. Price-wise, it's actually one of the cheaper systems. There's some that are quite expensive. It's, you know, I would say on average, a lot of the systems we looked at were probably in the 40,000 per intersection range. A lot of what's out there, and this was actually one of the cheaper systems.
Just to follow up, the 41st Street project will take place later this year, and that's going to impact a lot of us on 41st Street. So I think this is a great beginning. I'm glad Heath is there, and I think people are going to be happier traveling.
Good. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everybody for the presentation. I look forward to driving on 26th Street when the new system is up and running.
All right.
I wish we could attach this to a bottom of a motorcycle. It'd be fantastic. Okay, that being said, we do have Public Services Committee immediately following this. We are going to need to have 10 minutes in between the meetings, and then, of course, at 7 o'clock this evening, we do have a City Council meeting. That being said, meeting adjourned.